Hello, everyone. This is Carolyn reading to you from the Vineyard Gazette. Today is Tuesday, July 30th. As always, we'll start with our front page local stories. The first story is entitled, Former Cop Takes Up Counseling at High School, by Louisa Hofstetter. Former Oak Bluffs police officer and Rhode Island State Police Detective Jared Andrews is joining the Martha's Vineyard Regional High School staff as director of the Student Affairs Office, overseeing the school's guidance and counseling department. We have incredible guidance counselors, and we were looking for someone to round out the team, said high school principal Sarah Dinglady. Mr. Andrews, who most recently has worked at Martha's Vineyard Community Services, is also a youth hockey coach on the island, where he and his wife moved last summer to be closer to her family here. In Rhode Island, where he was with the state police from 2011 to 2023, Mr. Andrews helped start the force's Special Victims Unit, interviewing both victims and suspects of sexual assaults on children. He is trauma-informed. I think he's compassionate. I think he's supportive. And I think in the role that we're looking to complement other members of the team, he'll do a great job, Ms. Dinglady said. At the high school, Mr. Andrews' direct focus will be on working with students who are chronically tardy, absent, or breaking other rules, Ms. Dinglady said. He was selected for the job by a 10-member committee of high school teachers and community members, including NAACP President Tony Kaufman, she said. What the committee really liked was hearing his passions for working with the community as a whole and helping support students and families, Ms. Dinglady said. Mr. Andrews and his wife, who wed in 2013 and now have 3 children younger than 10, have known each other since he was just out of college and starting his law enforcement career on the Oak Bluffs police force in 2008, he said. I married into the island, he said. In 2011, he joined the Rhode Island State Police, where in 2019 he became a detective investigating major crimes, including a plague of unsolved assaults on children. I noticed the significant amount of attention that needed to be brought to the historical child molestations and sexual assaults, he said. The Special Victims Unit set up an interview room with soft toys and cushions, and Mr. Andrews brought in a golden doodle comfort dog, canine Gus, to ease the stress of talking about harrowing experiences. Gus remains on the job in Rhode Island, said Mr. Andrews, who moved to the Vineyard with his young family in June of 2023. In what might have seemed at first like a full-circle career loop, he rejoined the Oak Bluffs Police Department, working as an officer for the next few months. Going back to where I started in uniform and in Oak Bluffs, downtown, helping people, talking to people, enjoying the summer days and Circuit Avenue and answering questions. I absolutely loved it. It's a wonderful, humbling experience, Mr. Andrews said. He then took a position as a senior director of administration at Martha's Vineyard Community Services, working on initiatives such as a still in development program that would pair mental health professionals with emergency personnel responding to certain calls. When the high school job opened up, he was ready. Based on my time coaching and my background with children, I know that the school system is a good fit for me, Mr. Andrews said. The listening skills and trauma-informed approach he developed in his law enforcement career are key to what he hopes to do at Martha's Vineyard Regional High School, Mr. Andrews said. I have a connection with this community which is very tight-knit, down to the fabric, he said. It goes well beyond coaching hockey or speaking to kids about traumatic events. It's instilling a certain motivation and understanding of every child having their own story, Mr. Andrews said. As director of the high school's Student Affairs Office, Mr. Andrews succeeds former assistant principal Jeremy Light, who wore both hats before becoming principal of the Oak Bluffs School this month. There were no qualified applicants to replace Mr. Light as assistant principal, however. We did not have any licensed candidates apply, although all candidates committed to pursuing licensure over the course of the year, Ms. Dinglady wrote in a letter to school employees. The State Education Department mandates a 3-step documented licensing process for principals and assistant principals, who must have at least 3 years of employment and education before they can begin to qualify. And our next local story in today's Vineyard Gazette is entitled, Edgartown Police Chief to Retire, by Ethan Gentner. After nearly 4 decades in the military and law enforcement, Edgartown Police Chief Bruce McNamee plans to retire at the end of September. Mr. McNamee's retirement ends a 6-year run as the head of the Edgartown Department and puts a bookend on a career that started when he was in high school and enlisted in the U.S. Navy. I've been in some kind of uniform, whether it be military or police, ever since, he said. Mr. McNamee, age 55, said in an interview this week that it was time to pass the torch, and he has been talking to town officials about the transition. A search process is expected to be finalized in the coming weeks. Edgartown Town Administrator James Haggerty praised the chief's professionalism and leadership over the years. He successfully assimilated into island culture and became an integral part of the community, a feat not to be understated on Martha's Vineyard, Mr. Haggerty said. Through numerous challenges, including the COVID-19 pandemic and Massachusetts criminal justice reform, he propelled the police department forward, and his accomplishments will have a lasting impact. Mr. McNamee, born in Newfoundland, Canada, and raised in Massachusetts, had family ties to the Vineyard when he moved here in 2018. His wife, Mary, is a teacher's aide at the Oak Bluffs School, and she is the daughter of David Healy, the namesake for Healy Square. But his career in law enforcement started on the mainland. After serving in the Navy, Mr. McNamee went into the Army National Guard and then served as a special police officer in Marshfield during college. In 1994, he joined the Massachusetts Environmental Police, and in 1997 went to work in Plymouth. During his 20 years in Plymouth, he worked his way up to captain, the second highest position in the department. Stepping into the Edgartown Police Department was a big change. He went from working with about 150 employees in the largest town in the state to overseeing fewer than 20 coworkers in a seasonal town. But working on the island town came with its fair share of attention. In 2022, Mr. McNamee's picture made it into the national press as he assisted the Vineyard's response to the now famous migrant flights orchestrated by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. There is also no shortage of calls when President Barack Obama is a resident in town. Mr. McNamee said he fell in love with the Vineyard right away due to its strong sense of community and the quiet off-season. It's still a small town, he said. Though it may get some national attention now and then, it's still a small town. Many may also recognize Mr. McNamee for his regular bagpipe performances. As a member of the Boston Gaelic Column of Pipes and Drums, Mr. McNamee plays his pipes at parades and events across the island and beyond, while often sporting a kilt. He picked up the instrument as a youngster with his brother and embraced it more when he became a police officer. He started taking lessons about 25 years ago, and it helped break down barriers in the community. The bagpipes were a terrific mechanism for me to ingratiate myself as an outsider, he said. Mr. McNamee expects to continue to play the bagpipes, allowing him to stay in touch with the police profession, and is considering taking on consulting at the federal government level in his retirement. But he will always cherish his time in Edgartown and thanked town officials and members of the community for making it memorable. It's the best job I've ever had, and one I will miss, he said. And there's a picture that accompanies this story. The caption reads, "Bruce McNamee plans to retire later this year after 6 years with the Edgartown Police Department." And the picture is of Mr. McNamee. And in community news, the next story today is entitled "Talking Turtles at Sense of Wonder Camp" by Claire Dow. Cy Montgomery has always felt more at home with animals than people. And as the author of 36 books on animals, ranging from hummingbirds to orangutans, animals clearly felt at home with her, too. Last week, Sense of Wonder Creations Summer Camp in Vineyard Haven hosted the New York Times bestselling author and naturalist, along with her co-worker and illustrator, Matt Patterson, for a, quote, turtle talk, end quote. Campers of all ages gathered at their work tables to hear Ms. Montgomery and Mr. Patterson share stories about their time as volunteers at the Turtle Rescue League in Southbridge. The work became the inspiration for their 2 most recent books. Ms. Montgomery told the children that each of her books is born from a personal challenge to apprentice herself to an animal to understand herself and the world better. Turtles felt like a particularly appropriate subject at this stage in her life, she said, as she finds herself in search of wisdom and a slower pace. We're going to pause this story now and go to the obituaries, but we will continue this story at the conclusion of the obituaries. And now, as always at the halfway point, we will move to the obituaries. Cheryl Noyes. Cheryl Noyes, age 74, of Edgartown, died on Saturday, July 27th at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston. Jeff Spear. Jeff Spear died peacefully at home Monday, July 22nd, after a brief illness. Catherine Dalton Dixon. Catherine Dalton Dixon, known to all as Kay, died peacefully at her home in West Grove, Pennsylvania, on June 19th. Christine Natishan Williams, age 83. Christine Natishan Williams of Mashpee and formerly of Martha's Vineyard, died peacefully in Barnstable on July 12th. She was 83. Carlo Giacomo D'Antonio, age 81. Carlo Giacomo D'Antonio of West Tisbury died on July 19th. He was 81. Keith Anthony de Betancourt. Keith was a lifelong islander and had a true love for the vineyard, not to mention all the family and friendships that kept him here. Jeffrey Spear, age 75. Jeffrey Spear of Vineyard Haven and formerly of West Tisbury died on July 22nd at his home. And now we'll continue with the story that we were reading prior to the obituaries. That story is entitled Talking Turtles at Sense of Wonder Camp. Of Time and Turtles, Mending the World, Shell by Shattered Shell, uses the story of turtles, their resilience, patience, and longevity, to take on a problem all people face as they age, making peace with time. Who better to teach me than these long-lived, slow teachers revered for their wisdom? Ms. Montgomery asked. Their second book together, The Book of Turtles, is a children's book featuring Mr. Patterson's acrylic paintings coupled with fun facts and anecdotes written by Ms. Montgomery. The pair's presentation focused first on their personal experiences with turtles of all types, including Ms. Montgomery's successful attempt performing reptile CPR on a baby turtle, and Mr. Patterson's travels to Central America in search of the perfect muse for his paintings. The presenters then implored campers to get involved in turtle conservation effort. When we think of animals, we need to take ourselves out of our own human limitations, Ms. Montgomery said, asking campers to envision themselves as turtles who had lost habitat to human activity. After the presentation, campers excitedly shared their own experiences with turtles and pledged to join the turtle conservation effort, one turtle crossing sign at a time. Sense of Wonder Creations founder Pam Benjamin, who has hosted campers every summer for the past 34 years at her home turned arts and crafts wonderland, said that the Turtle Talk was a perfect example of the camp's mission. Ms. Benjamin calls the camp a blend of helping to educate young people in the creative arts, care for the environment, and appreciation of cultural diversity. Ms. Montgomery and Mr. Patterson noted the uniquely long lifespan of the turtle as further impetus for their work. Many of the turtles that I have helped rehabilitate will live on for another century. What a wonderful legacy, Ms. Montgomery said. With each Turtle Talk, Ms. Montgomery and Mr. Patterson said they hope to inspire the next generation of conservationists, both in helping to save turtles and embracing the lessons these ancient creatures can teach us. And there's a picture accompanying this story. It's of children at camp listening to presenters. The caption says, author Cy Montgomery and illustrator Matt Patterson talking to kids at Sense of Wonder Camp. Our next story in the Vineyard Gazette is entitled, Vineyard Men Take a Stand Against Domestic Violence, by Addison Antonoff. Men from across the island Saturday stood atop the Vineyard Haven seawall as part of an annual tradition to raise awareness around domestic and sexual violence. Connect to End Violence, a domestic violence program and rape crisis center run by Martha's Vineyard Community Services, organized the event, now in its 12th year, to educate the men and boys on the island about gendered violence. The majority of perpetrators of domestic violence are men, although the majority of men do not commit that violence, and the majority of victims are women, said Jennifer Neary, the division leader of Connect to End Violence. This is an opportunity for Vineyard or visiting men to take a stand, literally and figuratively, as part of the solution to violence against women. Community members who took part in the stand wrote why they chose to participate on chalkboards and posters. The majority of men wrote the names of women who were important to them. Matthew Malowski, Connect's male initiative specialist and a school adjustment counselor at Martha's Vineyard Regional High School, was one of the men standing out on the seawall. He has been engaging students on the topic of domestic and sexual violence through a program called SWEAR, which letters stand for Stand with Everyone Against Rape. The group, which is mostly young men, has had a series of meetings, dinners, and retreats where they discuss things such as what it means to be a man, how to be vulnerable, and stereotypes of masculinity. The program also provides bystander training. We know that the overwhelming majority of harm that's caused in this world is done by men, Mr. Malowski said. Yet only about 5 to 10% of the men in this world are actually causing harm. If such a minority amount of men are causing this harm, then what are the rest of us doing? Most men are good men. Most men are loving, caring, nurturing, great men, but serious harm is still being caused. A large portion of the approximately 30 men who stood on the seawall Saturday were member of the Martha's Vineyard Sharks baseball team. The team has participated in the event several times, and this year was no exception, although the team had to leave to catch the boat for an off-island double-header. I think it's important for the community to show that we support everything that happens here, said Russ Curran, the general manager of the team. We all have women in our lives that have been affected, and we want to show them where we stand on it. According to Ms. Neary, the team met with SWARE students last week to discuss what the program taught them. Bob Dusa, who stood on the wall and hosts one of the Shark players for the summer, said that the conversation about gendered violence has to continue at home. We had a conversation yesterday evening about what women are confronted with, even at a very young age. That's a concern to me, and it should be for everybody, said Mr. Dusa. I think it's come to the forefront more recently. Like any other issue that is problematic, it's usually concealed for a while, or you don't talk about it until something happens. There's several pictures that accompany this story. The first is of men standing on the seawall with a caption that says, "The annual Seawall Stand to raise awareness around domestic and sexual violence drew about 30 island men Saturday." There's another picture of the men standing on the seawall. This caption says, "The event is now in its 12th year." And the final picture of the men standing on the seawall says, "Many men held signs with names of women in their lives." This has been Carolyn reading to you from the Martha's Vineyard Gazette on Tuesday, July 30th. I hope you all have a wonderful day.